Astonishing Millionaire pretends to be in a coma, then discovers his nurse's shocking secret. Samuel Cashman floated in a blur of muffled voices and sterile smells, the world around him a distant echo of his lavish life as a Texas millionaire. He could feel the weight of tailored suits pressing down on him, a burden now heavy with regret. Around him, the whispers of his family chattered like restless ghosts, their sharp words slicing through the haze. He held a strong urge to scream, to break free from the confines of this purgatorial existence, but his body lay immobile, a prison of his own making. Elena, his nurse, drifted in and out of focus, her tired eyes a stark contrast to the polished perfection of his previous life. She was devoted, her hands gentle yet strong as she adjusted his IV. Yet, for all her grace, she was more than just a caregiver. She was a scientist, a dreamer, with ideas that could uplift their small town. Samuel had always prided himself on being on the winning side of success, yet he found himself questioning it now. Could money truly buy happiness? With every slow tick of the clock, anxiety curled in his gut like a serpent. Memories of his estranged brother, Greg, crackled like static electricity in his mind. Greg, the opportunist, had arrived a few days ago, his feigned concern barely masking a lifetime of greed. Samuel's heart raced with resentment as he recalled their bitter rivalry, the envy and accusations that had polluted their relationship. Would Greg seize this moment of weakness to claim what was never rightfully his? As days stretched into an eternity, Samuel felt his purpose wavering. No longer was he the king of a money-besotted empire. He was merely a bystander observing life through a fogged lens. His simple breaths felt labored, each inhalation a reminder of his deliberate coping mechanism, veiled in silence. How had he allowed himself to become so lost in the chase for wealth, while token sacrifices drowned out genuine connections? The very thought was crippling. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Samuel's mind ignited with determination. He could feign waking up. He could confront Greg and redeem himself while simultaneously revealing Elena's brilliance that had gone unnoticed. His heart raced as he pictured the scenario, the tension hanging thick like wildfire. To challenge the dynamics, to embrace vulnerability, it felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The moment of truth arrived, and he cracked his eyelids open, a flicker of false confusion shadowing his expression. Gasps filled the room, the weight of their expectant gazes pressing down on him. As he focused on Greg's anxious face, Samuel felt a shiver travel along his spine. This was it. But when he opened his mouth to address the room, to breach the silence between greed and nobility, the door swung wide. The townsfolk poured in, leaving no space for his words, turning his spotlight into a cage of judgment and anticipation. He held their hopes in the palm of his hand, but would he muster the courage to change everything? A storm brewed within him, emotions colliding as his brother bore down with a gaze that threatened to expose old wounds. Samuel's breath hitched. The stakes were no longer just his own. Would he dive deep into the truths they'd lost, or drown in the expectations that swirled around him? The electrical weight of the moment crackled in the air, leaving Samuel on the precipice of revelation, where every choice could alter the very fabric of their lives forever. As the room filled with the townsfolk's anxious whispers, Samuel's heart thundered in his chest. So many eyes fixed upon him. Each one was a mirror reflecting his past failures and unrealized potential. The weight of their desire for him to rise from his stupor, a monument of expectations, threatened to suffocate him. Could he truly navigate this sea of scrutiny? Samuel quickly assessed the room. Greg loomed close, a storm of unease cloaking him as his brother's thin veneer of concern began to crack. Then there was Elena, standing quietly. She bore witness not just as a nurse but as the untapped well of wisdom he'd long overlooked. In her worn, yet resolute gaze, he saw a flicker of potential, a chance for reconciliation, and a leap towards a new future. With each passing moment, a plan began to unravel in his mind. He had stepped off the pedestal of wealth, but what if he could climb a new one made of integrity? No more competitive rivalry or petty jealousy. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the community, the lives intertwined with his own, and a nurse whose brilliance deserved recognition. Then, Samuel took a breath, deep, searching, and perhaps for the first time in a long while, authentic. The collective hush that enveloped the room became his catalyst. The air felt charged, alive with the possibility of renewal. He remembered his rare family gatherings that had devolved into arguments or silent treatments, etched with regret. Would his voice now break that cycle? If he were to rise, would he falter in his mission before it could even begin? Suddenly, as though an unseen hand had taken hold of his spirit, Samuel pushed through the silence. It became impossible to stay tethered to silence. The truth was writhing in his throat, begging for release. "Greg," he finally voiced, his tone steady despite the tumbling chaos within. "There has been too much animosity between us. I need you to understand that our rivalry has robbed us both of what matters. Real connection." The impact of his words shattered the tension like glass. Murmurs ricocheted around the room, and Samuel felt the collective breath of disbelief. He continued, "I have spent far too long in pursuit of hollow victories and financial crowns, while my family, my brother, the love we carried, lay dormant, but it's time to wake it." In that moment, he could feel Elena's gaze, searching, strong. It grounded him. This was not just about what he wished to say. It was about how he would choose to act going forward. "Every one of you has brought something valuable into my life, and I promise to start honoring those relationships here and now." The words flowed, fueled by an undeniable urge to shift the narrative. Yet, as empowerment surged through him, an underlying trepidation clawed low in his belly. What if Greg used this opening against him? What if the camaraderie he sought among his townspeople turned sour? As if reading his doubts, Greg stepped forward, incredulity painted across his features. "I knew you'd be back with a speech, but it's too late. You can't just erase the past. You think this will change my mind?" His voice dripped with cynicism, the very fire that had fueled their feud roaring back to life. Samuel's resolve flickered momentarily, but he remained undeterred. This is not about rewriting the past, but shaping a future that accommodates the potential we can unleash together. Around them, the tension twisted into a coil, new and bracing. Samuel felt the charge of possibility in the air, but also the precariousness of vulnerability. He faced the specter of his past head-on, yet it was just the beginning. Would this gamble propel him forward, or consume him in its flames? As the weight of Greg's skepticism bristled in the atmosphere, Samuel knew he needed not just to confront the doubts, but also to face the ultimate choices yet to come. And in that lingering heartbeat, he realized that the hard truths were only starting to surface, exposing the layers of fear that threatened to overshadow his newfound clarity. But would he rise from the ashes, or be left standing in the shadows of his own regret? The answer awaited him just beyond the horizon of his next choices, compelling him to forge ahead, no matter the cost. Samuel's heart raced, as the weight of Greg's words settled over him like a heavy shroud. Had he miscalculated the room's dynamics? The whispering voices of the townsfolk hummed in the background, but their skepticism felt louder than any applause he'd once sought. Ignoring his rising panic, Samuel pushed forward. Every ounce of his being clung to the fleeting notion that this moment was pivotal, not just for the room, but for himself. "You're right. I can't erase the past, but I can't let it define our future either," he said, his voice steadying. gaining strength from the depths of his insecurities. Greg's expression flickered, revealing a mixture of annoyance and reluctant curiosity. For a fleeting moment, Samuel saw not just his brother's antagonism, but the confusion of a man who had stood, equally petrified, at the crossroads of ambition and familial bonds. Could this realization become a bridge rather than a battleground? Let's start fresh. If you'll let me, I want to collaborate, not compete, Samuel continued, his eyes scanning the crowd. The attached weight of expectations and his own ambitions felt almost suffocating under the watchful gaze of the townspeople. But he was determined to claim his ground. Elena's presence loomed at the edge of his consciousness, a soft beacon of encouragement. In her gaze, he sensed a mandate, an unspoken understanding that he needed to honor the relationships he had so carelessly neglected. But how? Did he even have the courage to act on this newfound insight? The silence stretched uncomfortably, and Greg narrowed his eyes, contemplating his response. There was a mixture of challenge and uncertainty in his voice. You think some words can fix everything? You think you can just stroll back in and make it all right? This challenged Samuel on the deepest level. He wrestled internally as self-doubt nibbled at his conscience. What if he was stepping into a web of lies he could not escape? I don't expect instant remedies, but the least I can do is put in the effort, he said, feeling a spark of conviction ignite within him. Effort isn't the same as substance, Greg shot back, folding his arms as he leaned back, still skeptical, but intrigued. His posture suggested that Samuel's words had penetrated the shield built from years of rivalry. Samuel recognized this as an opening, a moment to demonstrate genuine commitment, rather than hollow promises. I'm ready to do the work, he declared, feeling the resolve surge within him like a flame lighting the darkness. I want to understand how we got here, Greg. What happened to steer us apart? It's time to address these issues head-on. A palpable shift rippled through the crowd. An electrifying mix of hope and intrigue suffused with uncertainty. Samuel could feel the potential of connection stir in the room, but that realization was overshadowed by the risk of failure lurking just outside the circle of vulnerability. Emotions don't fix everything, Greg countered, but Samuel noted the slight loosening of his brother's defenses. Yes, he replied, but they're the foundation. And I'm willing to dig deep, not just for myself, but for us. We can't keep living this narrative of rivalry and resentment. Samuel took a small step forward, noting the intrigue in the faces of the townsfolk and the wavering certainty in Greg's expression. It's not just about us. It's about everyone. We owe it to the people who look up to us to find a way through. At that moment, his own inner reconciliation felt tantalizingly close. But would genuine intentions be enough to dismantle years of animosity? As silence enveloped them once more, Samuel recognized that deep within the folds of this challenge lay daunting questions yet unanswered, those of loyalty, ambition, and depth of understanding. He understood more than ever that the risk was colossal, but rising from this disarray could be the very path to fulfillment he had sought. As he studied Greg, determination emerged alongside fear, a perfect concoction stirring within him. This defining moment could either free them or perpetuate their estrangement. The path ahead twisted and turned like the very roads of their childhood, and Samuel sensed that his next steps would require profound courage. Then, unexpectedly, Elena quietly cleared her throat, and the room fell entirely still. Samuel turned toward her, the tension crackling. Samuel, do you really think you're ready to confront the shadows of your past? Her question hung ominously in the air, leaving no one unaffected. The stakes were rising, and Samuel felt that this reckoning would decide not just his fate, but the intricate fabric of relationships he had so long neglected. Would he dare to navigate this labyrinth of conflicting emotions and hidden truths? The answer loomed just around the corner, beckoning him forward into deeper uncertainty. Samuel's mind was a whirlwind as he processed Elena's question. Confronting the past meant wrestling with his own failures. dissecting moments he'd tried to bury. It felt like standing at the precipice of a cliff, contemplating a leap into uncharted waters. He'd prided himself on his ability to forge his own path, but the realization that he would have to face the echoes of his choices sent a shiver down his spine. What if I'm not ready? He thought, feeling the weight of Elena's scrutiny. Beneath her calm exterior, he sensed the stakes she implied. It wasn't merely a personal reckoning, it was a communal one, woven into the very fabric of their entwined histories. Samuel cleared his throat, forcing himself to meet Greg's gaze. It's not about fixing everything overnight, he began, the words flowing as he sought clarity in the muddled thoughts. It's about being real. I want us to be honest with each other. He saw Greg's brow furrow, tension radiating from his brother, as if they were back in their childhood, competing over the smallest victories. Only this time, the stakes felt infinitely higher. Samuel leaned in slightly, a gesture that signified his commitment. I'm tired of pretending, Greg. I've been running from my past, from our past, but I can't do this alone. I need you to be part of this journey. There was an uneasiness in the crowd, a collective breathing in of incredulity. Greg tilted his head, the lines on his face deepening in thought. Samuel's heart raced. He understood the precariousness of this moment. A moment of trust could lead to a breakthrough, or it could set fire to everything he hoped to build. I acknowledge this might sound naive, he added, wrestling with the vulnerability of his admission. But in order for me to find forgiveness, I must first ask for it. And I know I've hurt you, Greg. As he spoke, a revelation sparked inside him. It was no longer just about acknowledging the rift. It was about genuinely understanding the reasons behind it. Samuel had spent too long in the shadows, chasing hollow aspirations, while his relationships splintered beneath his feet. Greg's expression softened imperceptibly, a flicker of vulnerability emerging from behind his guarded demeanor. Samuel felt hope stir within, that perhaps Greg, too, carried the weight of unresolved emotions. The silence hung heavy like a fog, but this time it felt pregnant with possibilities. Samuel envisioned each person in the room confronted with their own histories, unvoiced grudges, the weight of expectations. It was more than a personal metamorphosis. It was the beginning of a necessary dialogue. What happened to us? He asked, his voice quieter now but steady. That question alone felt revolutionary. Samuel needed to uncover the truth, not just for his sake, but to pave a way forward for them both. Elena shifted slightly, her eyes widening as she responded not with words, but with a supportive nod, affirming Samuel's courage. The moment felt sacred, like liminal space where transformation was possible. Greg's brow furrowed deeper, and he exhaled slowly, a deep breath that signified his contemplation. Do you really think we can just walk through those memories and come out unscathed? I don't expect it to be easy, Samuel replied, gaining momentum with each word. But I believe it's crucial. It's time we break this cycle of resentment and pain. The room felt charged with this exchange, the dichotomy of fear and anticipation thrumming in the air. Samuel stood at the center of it, no longer just a man seeking redemption in isolation, but a brother extending a hand toward connection. This vulnerability ignited something within him, a burgeoning confidence fueled by honesty. If we are to rebuild any semblance of a relationship, we must collectively face what's remaining, he declared. Just as he began to sense movement within Greg, a sudden realization gripped him. They were standing on the edge of a true breakthrough or an inevitable catastrophe. He hesitated, taking a cautious step back. But maybe I'm not the only one who needs to confront their past, am I, Greg? The eye contact held a promise of confrontation, and Samuel felt the quiver of shared truths waiting to be spoken. Greg's next words might either dismantle or strengthen the bond they had fought to preserve. The room closed around them, a vortex of potential. It was a reckoning, charged with unresolved sorrows, and Samuel sensed that everything they had once been was about to break open. Would he and Greg emerge from the shadows, or would the past continue to haunt them both? Samuel's heartbeat drummed in his ears as he held Greg's gaze, the weight of unspooled memories pressing against his chest. The silence that followed felt like both a cocoon and a cage, a sanctuary that served no comfort in its stillness. Each passing second seemed to stretch, tangling their shared past in a web that felt increasingly suffocating. "Why should I trust you now?" Greg finally asked, his voice low and edged with skepticism. "You turned your back when it mattered most." The unvarnished truth sliced through Samuel like a cold blade. He'd accepted that accusation 1,000 times in the mirror, but hearing it voiced crystallized the pain in a way he never could have predicted. "I know, and I'm sorry," Samuel offered, his voice steadier than he felt. Apologies often sounded cheap, flung around like confetti, but he intended this one as a seed for something more substantial, a genuine desire for change. "But I can't change the past without confronting it. I need you to meet me halfway." Greg's expression shifted imperceptibly, a crease forming at the bridge of his brow as if he were weighing options. Samuel could see the conflict roiling in him, but also a glimmer of something akin to hope. What if this was their moment? Yet, how to proceed? Samuel grappled with the crucial next steps, while the air between them crackled with anticipation. Should he delve deeper into their childhood, or perhaps address the towering expectations they both carried? As if reading his thoughts, Elena interjected softly. "Remember, Samuel, unearthing the past requires vulnerability. It's about peeling back those layers, not just trudging through them." Her comment flared a sense of urgency within him, pushing him to reclaim the initiative. "Let's bring it up then," he said, forcing a brittle smile. "The moment Dad chose work over the family vacation, the time you needed me to stand up for you in that schoolyard brawl, and I just watched." The gravity of those memories weighted the air further, but Samuel needed to say them. Greg flinched at the recollection. "You were scared, Sam. I was half your size. In your eyes, you watched me wear my pain completely alone. Not once did you reach out, and it killed me." Samuel internalized the accusation. It struck the core of his identity, though he knew they had both been children then. "I know that pain, Greg. I felt it too. But I was afraid of not being good enough." The admission tumbled out into the space of their confrontation, raw and unfiltered. What had begun as feigned confidence turned into a willing dive into vulnerability. "Saying it out loud doesn't make it real," Greg replied, doubt creeping back into his voice. Samuel leaned forward, both determined and careful. "Let's be real together, Greg. I've been swimming in my regrets, and it's suffocating." He took a slow breath, letting the weight of his siblings' words anchor him deeper. "But if this is going to work, we both have to acknowledge the hurt and the ways we failed each other." The air thickened, a palpable tension crackling from the clouds of unspoken resentments. He held his brother's gaze, searching for signs of understanding, and for a moment, he thought he spotted it. A flicker of mutual recognition amidst memories laid bare. As they stood on the precipice of revealing deeper scars, Samuel felt the ground shift beneath him. This was not merely about their history. It was about transforming it into a foundation for something new. His heart quickened at the thought. Could vulnerability truly serve as a bridge? Would shared truth pave the way for reconciliation? Just then, Greg hesitated, his expression shifting, conflicted. And if it all just unravels before our eyes? What if I can't forgive? Samuel pondered the question, heart racing with the weight of possibility. This moment carried the potential for destruction or rebirth, a slippery slope between progress and abyssal failure. If it unravels, at least we'll walk away knowing we tried, he whispered, a soft resolve cascading over him like a protective shroud. A new realization grounded him. If they were to face each other, their fears, their failures, this conversation would not be a simple patchwork of apologies. It would be the first step toward an uncertain but hopeful reconstruction. The space between them felt charged. Each moment stretched and pulled, as if time itself awaited the next move. Just as Samuel was about to speak again, a sudden pounding echoed from the door. The harsh noise sliced through the tension like a guillotine. Their gaze shifted toward the doorway, both intrigued and apprehensive. Who would step forward to disrupt this pivotal exchange? With breath held in anticipation, Samuel felt the ground tremble beneath the weight of their unresolved past and a new, startling potential for transformation. The door swung open with a force that shattered the fragile moment. A tall figure framed in the doorway stepped in, casting a long shadow that stretched across the floor like a harbinger of uncertainty. The unexpected intrusion was more than a mere distraction. It felt like a calculated interjection into a meticulously orchestrated emotional symphony. "Samuel! There you are!" The voice belonged to Laura, his former co-worker, her face bright with excitement, but her eyes were riddled with concern. "I was looking for you everywhere. It's important. We've got to talk." The urgency in her tone ignited a spark of tension within Samuel. He noticed Greg's eyebrows furrow, annoyance flickering across his features as they both shared a brief glance, then returned their focus to Laura. "What's going on?" Samuel's voice dropped slightly, sensing that whatever she had to say might pull him away from this precarious moment with Greg. Each word exchanged between him and his brother had been carefully crafted, peeling away at layers of the past. Yet here was Laura, poised to rewrite the narrative. "It's about the merger," she began, taking a measured step closer, her voice lowered. "You might want to reconsider your involvement. Some serious issues are coming to light, and I don't think it's going to go the way you expect." Samuel's pulse quickened, half listening while wrangling with an internal conflict. Business matters had always been his escape from emotional turmoil. Yet now, the conversation with Greg loomed larger than anything a boardroom could provoke. This was an opportunity for reclamation of brotherhood, the kind of moment that could define or shatter them. But Laura's impromptu arrival felt like a weight, dragging him back down into the abyss he was trying so desperately to rise from. "I'll be there in a moment, Laura," Samuel managed, trying to convey both confidence and dismissal. "We really need to talk now," she insisted, her intensity rising. Greg shifted, bracing himself against the tension of the room as he studied Samuel with keen eyes. "Go ahead. Handle your business, Sam. We can come back to this later." A flicker of resentment laced Greg's words, thinly veiled beneath a veneer of understanding. It stung, and Samuel felt the fragile walls he'd just begun to construct start to crumble. Drawing on deep breaths, Samuel confronted his instinct to flee back into professional realms. Here was an invitation to step deeper into vulnerability, to navigate a pivotal conversation with his brother, rather than retreat into the world that often felt safer, yet shallow. "Laura," he spoke firmly, his voice a grounding force, "I need a moment." The determination behind his words surprised even himself as he turned back toward Greg, urging him to stay present. "This is important." "Is it more important than this?" Greg gestured between them, his tone a mix of sarcasm and sincerity, clearly exasperated. Samuel's insides twisted. What if this moment was fleeting, a fragile window into understanding that could easily shut? Before he could respond, Laura took another step, encroaching further on their space. "Samuel, seriously, you might want to reconsider what you're involved in. I'm not sure you're seeing the bigger picture." She planted her hands on her hips, a defiant stance that subtly conveyed urgency and challenge. "Can't you see that I'm trying to work through something here?" Samuel snapped, his frustration boiling to the surface. "I've put everything on hold to confront my past, and I need to see this through." "You can't ignore reality, Sam. Your past won't just vanish because you'd like it to," she shot back. The discussion grew heated, full of barbed exchanges that wrapped around them like a vice. In those moments, Samuel felt conflicting forces battling within him. His desire to push forward with Greg, and the growing sense of impending decisions regarding his career that Laura represented. What if confronting this new twist were the key to unlocking not only his relationship with Greg, but also his professional identity? Samuel's mind raced as he grappled with a revelation. He had hidden from both his familial responsibilities and his corporate realities, allowing fear to dictate his choices. As the weight of the confrontation hung heavy, Laura's eyes softened for a moment, piercing through Samuel's defenses. Just remember, ignoring important parts of your life won't make them disappear. Eventually, they will catch up with you. A chill ran down Samuel's spine at the stark truth in her words. This moment was merely a reflection of his larger struggle, balancing professional obligations with personal growth and healing. With a glance at Greg, who remained unyielding, Samuel faced a daunting decision. Would he engage further with this uncertain business revelation, or press into the emotional depths he'd been avoiding while grounding his relationship with his brother in honesty? Silence descended, a loaded pause before the storm, and Samuel could almost hear the ticking clock of his unresolved past echoing through the room, reminding him that every second counted. The moment of truth had come. Which path would he choose? He felt as if he balanced on a precipice, and his next move would either solidify this fragile bridge back to Greg, or plunge him into an abyss of missed opportunities. What awaited him on the other side of this pivotal choice? Would he finally start to reclaim both his family and his future? An uneasy silence filled the room, wrapping around Samuel like an encroaching fog. His heart raced as he looked from Laura's steely gaze to Greg's guarded expression. Caught between two worlds, each tugged at him with equal force. One was the familiarity of family, the other the calculated chaos of corporate maneuvering. He could feel the pressure mounting in the atmosphere, a tangible weight that threatened to crush him under the enormity of his indecision. Finally breaking the deadlock, he drew in a breath, his voice steadier than he felt. Laura, if there are real concerns about the merger, then I need to know what they are. But I can't abandon this moment, not with Greg. The statement sounded more like a plea than a declaration, filled with both defiance and vulnerability. He was aware that he was holding on to a thread frayed by years of resentment and misunderstanding. Greg's eyes narrowed slightly, annoyance bubbling just beneath the surface. So what? You're going to prioritize a business deal over your brother? The judgment in his voice was unmistakable, and it stung. Samuel knew emotions ran high. This wasn't just about business, it was about trust. Grappling with his emotions, Samuel wrestled with the weight of Greg's accusation. Just as he began to respond, Laura interjected, her tone sharp and insistent. We can't ignore that issues have surfaced about potential misconduct in the merger negotiations. You need to be aware of your obligations, Sam. The clock is ticking on this. Flashes of alarm surged through him at the mention of misconduct. Discrepancies, perhaps, he hadn't seen or chosen to overlook while drunk in the pursuit of success. It was a warning bell ringing, sounding too close to home. I need clarity. What exactly do you know? Samuel's voice was firm now, driven by a mix of desperation and intrigue. This conversation veered dangerously into territory he had long been avoiding, yet it struck at the heart of his professional identity. Would he be abandoning a chance at success if he didn't act? As Laura launched into details about suspicious financial practices, he sensed the room shifting. Greg, meanwhile, stood rigid, radiating a myriad of emotions. Samuel could feel the chasm widening. Their shared history echoed in his mind, memories surfacing of a tight bond now frayed at the edges by years of avoidance. Do you ever wonder why you're choosing this, Samuel? Greg's voice cut through the chaos of thoughts, layered with feelings of betrayal and urgency. Every time you get wrapped up in this job, you run. And I'm left here, wondering where you really belong. The raw honesty in his brother's words struck deep. It was a confrontational mirror reflecting truths Samuel had struggled to face. Why had he buried himself in work, using it as an escape? It was more than ambition. It was a defense mechanism he had honed over the years. "Maybe you're right," Samuel whispered, feeling the weight of his brother's accusation bloom into a truth he couldn't ignore. "But I need to find a way to balance both my life and my career. I can't just walk away from this merger without knowing what's at stake." Laura's voice cut back in, a lifeline amidst the turbulent emotions. "Then let's take action. It's your choice how to proceed, but you need to make it decisively. The stakes are escalating, and soon you might not have a choice." Samuel closed his eyes for a moment, the tension radiating in every fiber of his being. The truth of the matter was dawning. The opportunity for growth didn't solely lie in his career or with Greg. It lay in choosing honesty and confrontation over retreat. His internal fears and the conflict with Greg intertwined, demanding resolution. As he opened his eyes, Samuel steeled himself for the moment ahead. It was no longer just a business opportunity on the line. It was about reclaiming pieces of himself he had neglected for far too long. The next step would require more honesty and bravery than he had mustered in years. "Okay, let's tackle these concerns head-on. Laura, bring me everything you have," he instructed, his tone sharpened by newfound resolve. "Then I need to talk with Greg about where we can go from here." Greg's gaze softened just a fraction, indicating that this commitment might be a breakthrough, an opening in the wall they had both built over years of silence and distance. Samuel felt the balance shift, a palpable shift of gravity as both worlds began to intertwine, personal and professional. But just as he envisioned a path forward, the door creaked open again, this time revealing Nathan, a senior partner at work. His expression was tense and urgent. "Samuel, we need to talk. It's about the merger." In that instant, Samuel sensed the precariousness of his newfound stance. What revelation awaited him now? Would it tip the scales, shattering any hope of reconciliation, or push him further into growth? The stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Would he be able to handle it all at once? Samuel's heart thudded in his chest as Nathan stepped into the room, his urgent demeanor a jarring contrast to the emotional currents already swirling around him. He gestured for Nathan to continue, the weight of impending revelations pressing down on him like an anchor. "Sit down, Samuel," Nathan said, his voice low but brimming with authority. He pulled a chair closer, glancing warily at Laura and Greg, who remained silently observant, their past grievances now overshadowed by the immediate threat looming over them. A deep breath fortified Samuel, grounding him as he tried to anticipate what Nathan was about to reveal. The air tasted stale, heavy with the tension of unspoken stakes. The merger might not simply falter, it could implode, or worse, compromise everything he had worked for. "We've received some concerning intel on the opposition," Nathan began, sliding a folder across the table to Samuel. "There's more going on than you know. Our competitors are digging into our affairs, and they've got information that could be detrimental. You need to understand that this isn't just about a business deal. Your reputation and integrity are at stake. The gravity of Nathan's words hit him like a fist. Samuel leaned closer to scan the document, each detail revealing a labyrinth of deceit that threatened to ensnare him. His palms grew clammy as he read about questionable financial transactions and an impending investigation by the SEC. Flashes of panic raced through him, igniting fears he thought he had buried deep. "I need you to act quickly. You can't let this go unchecked," Nathan insisted, his eyes locked onto Samuel's, expectant, yet understanding. As Samuel acknowledged the gravity of the situation, a part of him wanted to retreat to the familiar shadows of routine, to avoid the confrontation that awaited him. But he felt it now, an unfamiliar resolve sharpening his focus, driven by the knowledge that he had already chosen to step into the light. This was his moment to translate intention into action, but what action would define him? Laura's voice intruded on his thoughts. "What are you planning, Sam? You have to tread carefully. If you take the wrong steps here, it could mean everything." Greg shifted uncomfortably, an unsettling reminder of the familial ties at risk. The years of confrontation with corporate responsibility now transformed into a multifaceted dilemma. Samuel recognized his choices would ripple far beyond the office. The fallout would touch his family ties, his own integrity, and the future of the company he'd fought hard to build. "I'll assemble a task force to investigate. I'll need you both on board," he initiated, directing his gaze toward Laura and Greg. "This isn't just my fight. It's about the legacy we uphold, our values." Greg nodded, a slight flicker of approval crossing his face. Perhaps this was the way to navigate the widening gap between them, to forge an alliance rooted in a shared vision, rather than personal grievances. "Okay, but we also have to re-establish trust," Greg urged, his voice steadier now. "Trust within this family, and among ourselves at work. This can't turn into another avoidance tactic." In the complex tapestry of relationships, the confrontation with Greg embodied a new chapter, a willingness to tackle insecurities, to forge a path of transparency through vulnerability. Samuel realized that these personal struggles could fortify his resolve. They would become a channel for professional triumph. As they forged a plan, each simmering tension transformed into a collaborative effort. But just as Samuel believed he had harnessed a semblance of control, a nagging doubt flickered in the back of his mind. What if the impending investigation was only the tip of the iceberg? What deeper fissures could exist within the company he'd dedicated his life to? Determination anchored Samuel as he took command of the meeting, outlining next steps with urgency. But despite his outward composure, unease gnawed at him, a sense that hidden agendas lurked just beyond the horizon. Would he uncover truths that would devastate him, or would they lead to his redemption? "Keep your lines of communication open. We need to act fast," he commanded, a new steely resolve shaping his voice. And then, just as the room seemed to draw together in purpose, the phone buzzed on the table. All eyes turned to it, brimming with an unexpected sense of foreboding. Reaching for the device, Samuel's gut twisted as he recognized the name flashing on the screen. It was the last person he expected. A shadow from his past whose presence could shatter the fragile alliance he had just begun forging. "Hello?" he answered, his voice laced with anxiety. "Samuel, it's time we spoke about what really happened during the merger negotiations." The chill of foreboding coiled around him like a serpent ready to strike. What had he set in motion? And was he prepared to face the full breadth of his past choices? Samuel's breath caught in his throat as he listened to the voice on the other end of the line. For a moment, the clutter of the room faded away, leaving only the echo of that name reverberating in his mind, a name that held a history he had long tried to distance himself from. "What do you mean?" he asked, fighting to maintain his composure. The tension in his gut deepened, a reminder of battles he thought he'd won but had merely tucked away. There was a pause, heavy and charged, before the voice finally spoke again. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The merger wasn't clean, Samuel. You and I both played our parts. But don't you think it's time to recognize the consequences of your choices?" A chill swept through him, blending dread with the urgency of the moment. His mind raced back to the negotiations, power struggles, hidden agendas, and the haunted feeling that perhaps he had sacrificed more than just profit in the name of success. As the memories crashed over him, he realized one truth. He had never truly confronted the decisions that had led them here. "Listen," he said, forcing the words out with a steadiness he didn't feel. "If you have something to say, then say it. I'm not afraid of the past." "Well then, let's discuss it, shall we?" The voice dripped with a condescending tone that unsettled him further. "Its clear shadows still hang over your empire, and I might just have the information to clarify a few things, if you're willing to meet." Samuel's heart raced. He glanced at Laura and Greg, who were locked in a silent exchange, their expressions blending concern and curiosity. Every instinct urged him to proceed with caution, yet he felt the familiar pull of bravado. "I'll consider it," he replied tightly, disconnecting the call and setting the phone down with a heavy hand. A wave of guilt washed over him as he faced Laura and Greg. The prospect of confronting his past felt daunting, yet a spark of determination flickered within him. This was his chance, not just to save his career, but to salvage what was left of his integrity and rebuild the trust he had so carelessly fractured. "Who was that?" Laura asked, concern etched in her brow. "An old acquaintance," Samuel hedged. "Someone involved in the merger. They want to speak with me about some unfinished business." "Unfinished business?" Greg echoed, a warning lacing his tone. "You know what you're doing could jeopardize everything we're trying to fix here, right?" Samuel met his brother's gaze, the familial tension crackling in the air. "I'm more aware than you realize, but avoiding this won't make it go away. If anything, it's time I embrace the realities of my choices." Realizing the implications of his decision, some of the weight around Samuel's shoulders began to lift. The acknowledgement of his past was an unshackling, an invitation to confront the truth instead of camouflaging it with platitudes. "We need to include you both in this," he stated, redirecting their focus. "The aim is not just to survive. This is our chance to redefine who we are as a company and as a family." Laura crossed her arms, her skepticism evident, but there was also a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "All right, but how do we prepare? If this person knows something we don't, we're walking into a minefield." He thought about it. "What if we prepare a strategy meeting? We outline everything we know, analyze our vulnerabilities, and make sure our response is measured and not impulsive." Greg nodded, a sign of trust slowly rebuilding. "Let's focus on what we can control, and begin looking at how we can mitigate existing threats." Samuel felt the urgency surge again. As he turned to the whiteboard on the wall, grasping a marker with newfound purpose, he laid out the potential paths ahead. There was something thrilling about taking control again, about charting a way through the murky waters. Each route he charted felt like a vow, one that promised integrity, accountability, and the renewal of familial bonds. As they fleshed out their strategy, a thought tugged at the back of Samuel's mind, a nagging worry. What if the voice on the other end of that call wasn't just a shadow but an orchestrator, playing a far deeper game? Just as they concluded their session, the phone buzzed again, sending the room into a stunned silence. This time, Samuel recognized the number. It was his attorney, and the tension in the air shifted to palpable uncertainty. "Hi, Samuel. It's urgent. We need to talk about the SEC investigation." His gut twisted. The anticipation of what lay ahead pressed heavily on him. Would he break ground on a path to redemption, or be crushed beneath the weight of revelations yet to come? As Samuel stood amidst the uncertainty of his future, the gravity of the situation settled like a heavy fog around him. He had confronted the specter of his past, but now it appeared he was on the brink of unveiling its entirety. He glanced around at the faces of those who mattered most. Greg, forming a tentative alliance. Laura, steadfast at his side. They too were intertwined in the web of consequences spun from Samuel's choices. "Let's take a seat," he instructed, a new determination lighting his gaze. It was time to forge a united front. They gathered around the table, an unspoken commitment burgeoning amidst them. "Listen," he said, addressing both Greg and Laura. "This is not only about business anymore. This is about family, integrity, and accountability. We have to confront what we've ignored for too long." The words carried an assertion, framed by the maturity he'd gained through this chaotic journey. "Right," Greg said, finally admitting. "But what if it all crumbles down? This person could have the tools to dismantle our reputation, Sam." "I hear you," Samuel replied, embracing the fear that crept into the room. "But I've already carried the weight of denial, and it's intolerable. If we don't confront this, then we're still operating from a place of fear and shame." His brother's expression wavered. A flicker of doubt mingled with a hint of hope. "What's our plan?" he asked, voice steady, demonstrating the first stirrings of trust. "The SEC investigation requires transparency from us. I'll reach out to them and request an audience to address concerns head-on." Samuel stated resolutely. "We will gather all the documentation and prepare to answer every question. No shortcuts." Laura nodded, unflinching now. "Accountability is the cornerstone, and if you intend to lead us into this, we need a cohesive story." Greg's unease remained, but Samuel felt the threaded connections among them begin to transform. They were no longer entangled in animosity, but rather crafting a shared vision, the embers of collaboration glowing warmer. With newfound clarity, they began outlining their strategy. They discussed potential questions the SEC might pose, assigning roles and responsibilities to bind them together further as a united force. Each document examined, strategic query posed. It was met with a renewed commitment to transparency and collaboration. In moments of trivial matters, laughter peeked through the tension, allowing for glimpses of the bond they had nearly forfeited. Samuel felt a giddy release as they shared stories about family dynamics long ago overshadowed. After hours of strategizing, resistance gave way to confidence. Their focus had shifted, and Samuel finally grasped the core truth that had eluded him. "We're navigating this together." It wasn't just an enterprise on the line, but a chance to reinforce their familial foundations. As they wrapped up, Samuel's phone buzzed once more. Glancing at the screen, his heart raced. It was his attorney, ready to discuss the findings of the investigation. He exchanged a glance with Greg and Laura, and for the first time, their expressions were unified, not with fear, but determination. "Okay," Samuel said firmly. "Now we go into battle mode. I'll set up the call. But remember this. No matter what comes next, we are resilient because we've chosen to face it together." With a nod, he dialed the number. "Hi, Patricia. I'm ready to hear what we're facing." He spoke into the phone, voice leveled and assured, feeling more solid than he had in years. Each word dripped with resolve, an undercurrent of fear swirling within, tempered by newfound courage. Patricia began detailing the implications of the investigation, laying bare everything that had transpired. Samuel listened intently, knowing this confrontation would either build a new legacy or unravel their fragile resolve. But as figures poured forth on the line, the numbers interacting with truth, Samuel felt the certainty solidify within him. He wasn't retreating into the past or oblivion. Instead, he was setting his sights on a transformative future. "Thank you, Patricia," he concluded the call, steeling his spine. The difficult conversations had begun, but with each emerging truth, he grew more fortified against the siege of guilt and shadow. "Let's prepare for what lies ahead," he announced, turning to Greg and Laura. "This is our opportunity, for redemption, for rebuilding. This is how we solidify trust within ourselves and each other." In that moment, Samuel realized how fully he'd transformed. No longer the millionaire buried beneath hollow aspirations, he was now a man stepping into a spotlight fueled by integrity and promising renewal. They were entering an uncertain future together, but with an unbreakable foundation forged through honesty, vulnerability, and commitment. As they planned their next steps, Samuel felt the tide shift irrevocably within him. The stakes were monumental, but so was his resolve. Each decision was no longer a reaction to fear, but an affirmation of growth. He understood that achievement was no longer just about success and wealth, but a deeper fulfillment, one where relationships flourished and authenticity prevailed. "Together we'll make it through," he said, confidence illuminating his voice. And with those words, a chapter closed, yielding satisfaction, recognition of profound personal evolution. Samuel felt the satisfaction of becoming the man he had always aspired to be, a beacon in the form of familial unity, integrity, and the promise of brighter tomorrows. Now was the moment to act, to bring all facets of his life together. He'd encouraged his brother to build alliances instead of rivalries, conveyed steadfast commitment to Laura, and embraced the promise of familial revival. This transformational journey had been arduous, yet the climax delivered genuine growth and reaffirmed the ties that formed the essence of his being, a catalyst for true success. With fierce pride, he stood among the people who remained steadfast by his side, ready to face whatever lay ahead, a future teeming with promise and devoid of fear. Now that you've witnessed an incredible journey of transformation and resilience, you need to subscribe now to this channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that provoke growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for the powerful narratives of overcoming hardship. Comment below your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. You never know how it may resonate with others. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this profound conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal achievements understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.